Welcome all to this new webinar. I think it's going to be a very fun edition. We have the challenge of keeping up with two languages. We usually do these webinars in English with Spanish interpretation, and in this time, we're going to do it the other way around. We're going to do it in Spanish with English interpretation. My name is Andrea Ferreira. I'm Communications Manager of Management Sciences, and something that could be fun and that we cannot anticipate in this edition is as Julia and I are in Latin America, it's very likely, well, it can happen that suddenly we lose power. We hope it's not going to happen, but we have a backup plan in case Julia's screen or her video freezes. We're going to wait for a few seconds for her to get power back. If not, we have Isadora Angarita as backup from the Manomet team. And basically, we're going to be the entertainment, keeping the audience entertained, waiting for Julia to come back. Let's go on. Before giving the floor to Julia, I would like to give some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded in both languages for later to be uploaded to our YouTube channel. You can also see in the Zoom menu that there is a box for Q&A. I think that in Spanish also looks like Q&A, depends on how you have your Zoom. There you can ask questions in English or Spanish, whatever language you prefer, and we're going to answer them at the end of the presentation. And finally, we want to hear where you are you connecting from. So please tell us in the chat, as Lisa says that she's collecting from Manomet headquarters in Manomet, United States. Let's hear in the chat where you're connecting from. Another important detail is that both Julia and I are Latinas and we speak fast. So please, in the chat, let us know if Julia starts speaking too fast. Please let us know on the chat if the interpreter is not catching up so that we can have a more relaxed conversation. We trust Julia. She's an expert in this. So from we have from cell production to shorebird conservation. This is a specialist topic for Julia. She's a specialist in shorebird and is the third generation in a family of salt farm producers in the Gulf of Fonseca. I'm not gonna give more spoilers. I see people from Canada, Honduras, New York. As usually, we have a very diverse audience, not only from the Americas, but all over the world. Thank you, Julia. I'm going to turn off my microphone and the floor is yours. Hello, good morning, good afternoon for those who are on the other side of the world. Thank you very much. As Andrea said, my name is Julia. I'm from Honduras, and I'm going to share a little bit of the work that we have been doing in the Pacific coast of Honduras. As Andrea mentioned, it is important to share that I'm third generation of salt farmers in Honduras, which has allowed me to understand deeply the challenges that the salt farms are facing and plan together solutions to overcome them. To understand this story, we have to locate ourselves in the heart of South Central America. Honduras is privileged by its geography, with coast both in the Caribbean and the Pacific Oceans, which gives it a lot of richness in ecosystems and diversity. If we go to the south of Honduras, we're going to reach the Gulf of Fonseca, shared with Nicaragua and El Salvador. This landscape marked by mangroves and mudflats is one of the best for shorebirds in the Pacific coast. The Gulf of Fonseca hosts one of the 30 greatest concentrations of shorebirds in the Pacific coast. Every year, thousands of shorebirds depend on these wetlands to feed, reproduce, and fly. This is extremely important for the conservation of shorebirds in this landscape of artisanal salt farms, where the story that I'm going to share today starts. On the Honduras side of the Fonseca Gulf, there is the Bay of San Lorenzo. This is a protected area declared by the government of Honduras and globally important wetland, where a lot of the salt consumed in Honduras is produced. This is also the focus of our work, the Bay of San Lorenzo, which is also an important port in our country. And currently in Honduras, we have approximately 1,050 hectares of production in salt. This is mainly in the departments of Valle. This is over 80% of the national production and turns it into the second most important economic activity in the Pacific coast of Honduras. This salt farm is important to share that have been established over 100 years ago. This turns the production of salt in something very deeply rooted in the culture of these communities. As part of the production process, these salt farms and with the growth of communities and industries have expanded towards natural environments such as mangroves becoming a threat for habitats and biodiversity and also an opportunity. In the case of Honduras, these salt farms, birds and people share this same landscape for workers and salt farmers. These birds are part of their day-to-day life. The identity of the salt farms and their presence is no obstacle for production. Throughout the years, birds and people have learned to coexist in many occasions, as you can see in the picture. The birds keep feeding or resting even with people present within the farm, which shows this ability to live together in this landscape. The monitoring done in the Gulf of Fonseca has shown that the artisanal salt farms are very important habitats for shorebirds. Of the 23 species recorded in the region, 13 use salt farm landscapes. We have documented that the salt farms give feeding grounds for rest and for entertainment of the shorebirds residing there. Two species are the Wilson plover and Explosian black testrel. These nest usually in the salt farms, which confirms the value of these productive landscapes for this life cycle of these species. We can see some pictures there of what we can find in the salt farms. Associated to this monitoring and the presence of these birds, we have identified threats that affect the reproductive success or survival of these birds in these cycles. We can find the depredation of nests by cats and dogs, feral cats and dogs that enter the salt farms, accumulation of solid waste and plastics, the loss of nests due to extreme rains, floods, and other events that are associated to climate change or human activity. These findings have also been very important to design management actions that benefit simultaneously salt production and conservation of shorebirds. I think that the nicest part of this work has been throughout these 6 years to manage to obtain not only results in terms of conservation, but also production. And we have collaborated from the ground with the producers directly, trying to understand firsthand their needs, their challenges, and the time. And in this time, we have created relationships based in trust, honesty, empathy, and collaborative work. Thanks to this sustained work, the salt sector is ready to take part in new projects that involve changes, innovation, and greater commitment on the side of the farmers. This dialogue with the salt farmers was a gradual process. We wanted them to understand first who we were, why we were there, and what was motivating us, and we were interested in their salt farms. For us, we wanted them to feel part of this process, that the knowledge built throughout generations will be integrated into our research. For that, when we started, we visited the salt farms one by one. We listened to their history to understand their perception on shorebirds and all the challenges facing the sector currently. We started with workshops, visits to the farms, and highlighting the value of the salt farms, not only as productive spaces, but also bringing the importance as key ecosystems for shorebirds that are also important as a cultural and economic heritage of these coastal communities. More than developing a project, we wanted to rebuild a bond of trust and contribute for farmers to also recover the pride on their work that has been passed on generation after generation and represent an opportunity to conserve biodiversity in the Gulf of Fonseca. Throughout these 6 years and this process, we have managed to make the production visible, strengthening partnerships with government, academia, conservation organizations to highlight this key role the salt farms play in the conservation of shorebirds and the well-being of communities. This also has allowed us to build a growing network of partners and to develop capacities for conservation for shorebirds in the country. At the same time, farmers have opened their farms to students and researchers and have taken part in projects that have contributed valuable information for the management of their farms. As a result, we have strengthened the pride of the farmers for this business and to highlight the contribution they have in the conservation of shorebirds in the Gulf of Fonseca. This acknowledgement has generated international interest in supporting these initiatives that promote coastal landscapes and benefit shorebirds and the production sector. From the get-go in our work, we understood that we wanted to work together with these farmers and that we knew that conservation was only going to be possible if we started to answer to the real needs that the salt production sector had. That's how this project was born. Climate Resilient Salt and Shorebird Conservation is an initiative that we have designed to strengthen first with climate resilience, the artisanal salt farms, at the same time that we empower their habitats as key for shorebirds. We're adding social, economic, and environmental benefits, and we try to maintain active the artisanal production because this contributes not only to conservation, but we're also reducing poverty, creating jobs, and strengthening the means of life for these communities that generation after generation have depended on this. When we talk about redesign, we're focused more on water management throughout the production section. Here we ensure, because this is one of the most crucial stages in the productive process, to obtain the degree of salinity and temperature needed for the production of salt. If you can look on these two pictures, a series of small lagoons that are called warmers, heaters, that this is area within the salt farms most used by shorebirds to nest and to rest and to feed. On the picture from 2024 is the way this salt farm looked. We see that there are two large plots, or in 2026, one of the areas was transformed in more heating areas, the more shallow lagoons where they prepare water for salt production, but also we have more space for shorebird. Even though we only have 6 months in this implementation of this project, we have had positive results from this work. And we have created 23 new hectares of habitat for shorebirds within 10 farms, pilot farms that we are working with the expectation to increase 25% salt production. And once the project has been completed, to complete 50 hectares of new habitat for shorebirds. This project is also important because it involves 50% participation of farming women in a sector normally managed by men, where we're also making the role of women more visible. And we also foresee an increase of 20% in the income of these families. So far, we have been able to create 179 new jobs for these people in redesign and in production. The project also has as a target to benefit 13 of the over 20 species that use the Gulf of Fonseca, and we have monitored post designs. We have recorded that 9 of these 13 species, 69% of these priority species, are using the new redesigned areas. We also documented nesting of shorebirds in 6 of the 10 salt farms, and we have in February, we have had a sighting of the American golden plover. It's unusual for the time of year for this location. So it was a very interesting discovery as well. After all these years working together with the farmers, we understood that many of these challenges, such as climate change, the loss of productivity, the lack of visibility of the sector, and the need to strengthen local organizations of farmers, are also shared by several salt farming communities throughout Central America and Latin America. We also have discovered that these solutions built in a with participation of the community can generate benefits both for people and biodiversity. And from this experience, we have the community, an initiative that is created to connect uh, artisanal farmers, scientists, conservation organizations, and institutional allies, those who share this common goal to strengthen the salt producing landscapes where this has been happening for generations. The purpose is to exchange experiences, solutions, knowledge, and strengthen capacities and the local organizations in each of these countries to promote these practices that are climate resilient and also to contribute the conservation of shorebirds and other ecological values of these ecosystems. More than a network is a practice community of practice and a space for learning and sharing where we can accelerate solutions and avoid these communities to face the challenges alone, to share a common vision of the future that we want for the artisanal productive sector. Our vision and the next steps on what we're going to keep working in the salt production sector is to have salt farms resilient to climate change for more salt farms to adopt these sustainable practices while we also restore ecosystems and the conservation of biodiversity. We're going to work on the restoration of mangroves and mudfloods, and also we strengthen the means of life for the communities. We want to guarantee a greater reproductive success of the birds, and we also are interested in keep strengthening, sorry, the means of living of these communities through a sustainable salt brand where we can integrate different activities such as tourism based on nature as an alternative activity in the farms, which has started already in Honduras, and also to promote community of practice that acknowledges the salt farms as natural infrastructure for the adaptation to climate change and conservation of shorebirds, something that has happened through the collaborative work with the producers is the empowering women. This is something that we're going to keep doing when in one sector managed by men, women were a minority. Now they are taking their place in their participation and also sharing the knowledge that they also have as salt farmers. Well, to conclude, this work is the result of the commitment and the collaboration of many people and institutions who have believed in the potential of artisanal salt farms as landscapes where the production, conservation, and communities prosper together. I only have to thank deeply to all the farmers of Honduras, salt farmers of Honduras, who have opened the doors to their farms, to their homes, and have shared the knowledge and have built together with us solutions for a more resilient future. We also extend our acknowledgement to the local partners such as Soprosal, Del Valle, the universities, conservation organizations, international cooperation, the Forest Service, the Darwin Initiative, and of course, Manomet and the Executive Office of the Bird Conservation Organization for all the technical support. Thanks to this collective effort, we move forward to a productive model that contributes to the conservation of coastal ecosystems and shorebirds This path has shown that the best solutions are born when science, local knowledge, and collaboration work hand in hand. I thank you. If you're interested in more information, you can um, email me. There is also a link to our latest publication of the work we have done in Honduras, and we have a QR code for in case you want to support us with your donation. Thank you. Thank you, Julia. You could be a TED Talk speaker because it's such a good summary. I invite you to leave your questions in the Q&A box. I have some already, and with the QR code, as Julia says, to emphasize that we work throughout the American continent, from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego and Central America, where Julia is located, but we are a non-profit organization. So the support that you could give us always helps to expand the impact we have in each of our countries and everywhere the shorebirds choose to visit. So I would like to move on to questions. The first one I have is to go a little bit to your first slide. Maybe you can share the first slide of your childhood pictures. And is you come from a salt farming family. How do you make that connection with the shorebirds? Who started to look at notice the birds? Was it you, your grandpa? Maybe you can share a little more of that connection. Of course, Andrea. I had the luck of growing up in a salt farm, firsthand, surrounded by nature. And for me, this has always been a passion. People who work with nature, we grow up or we are born with this passion. In my case, just like my father and my grandfather, I have that love for the land. And I was always interested in salt production. But at the same time, I had the curiosity for everything that was happening in nature. Since I was a child, I was the first one to be up at 5 a.m. I will get up and go around the salt farm. I have done this same itinerary throughout 39 years. Wake up, get up, go for a walk. Then I became interested in the issue of shorebirds. I started finding the nests, learning more what these shorebirds were doing in the salt farms, why they were important. Then learning a little bit of photography. This started with the need of wanting to share the Honduran people that we produce salt, something that since an early age, I realized that a lot of people didn't know that Honduras was a salt producing country. I started personally in 2012. It was called Salt for Conservation. I wanted to highlight this sector. Uh, whatever I found, I wanted to share whatever I found in the farm, and this became a project of environmental education that to date we're still working on this, and now I also work as a salt specialist and shorebirds. Yes, and shorebirds. Thank you, Julia. I think it's very inspiring, and many listening probably envy you that life surrounded by nature. I'm going to keep with the questions. I have to translate a little bit the ones that we have in English. They're asking, I'm going to read it in both languages. So in case I make a mistake, they're asking if working with women empowerment involves any microfinancing, or how are you, what are you doing to involve women in the area more? Yes, when I was growing up in this sector, I kept here listening that it wasn't for women. So part of my work and what I was sure that I wanted to do was to change that mindset and show that women have as much knowledge in this production than men. When I started the process, I started to joining general meetings because I noticed that women's participation was minimal, or if all men voted, women voted along. This work was important of visiting farm by farm, visiting closely and speaking closely with these female farmers to understand what the situation was, why they didn't feel empowered, why there was that fear of speaking up to say, no, I don't think so. And truly, above all, is the culture where we live. Honduras is like many countries in Latin America. There is a lot of machoism where women participation is more at home, but work is more for the men. But in this case, I discovered a lot of female leaders, owners of their own farms, who have handled this business for many years, and there was an opportunity there. So a lot of this work was to integrate them, to make them part of these pilot projects that we were implementing. In the case of the Resilient Salt project, there was an importance that half of these farmers, the beneficiaries were women, and this was non-negotiable. To truly integrate them in this participation, to give them their place, was the first step for the integration of these women. Now we have these female leaders who are uh, participants with whom we sit down to ideate projects. In the future, also, we expect to bring specific funds for training them, to keep empowering them to work on more projects focused on women. I have, I think this is a very large impact that we are all assimilating while we here heard your answer, and I have one that is very linked to this. What has meant to you personally to work in Manomet with this support that you're providing, not only to shorebirds, but also to help communities and traditions that you grew up with, as you said, in these 39 years uh, living in a salt farm? For me, this represents a personal goal, personally and professionally. Always my work, my vision was linked to never detaching myself from the salt farm work, to always be present. As I mentioned, always, it is impossible for me to imagine a life where I cannot say, I'm going to the salt farm, I'm going to see the shorebirds. And something important is that coming from a salt farming family has allowed me to respect this tradition and this culture that people have, not coming from an organization, a conservation organization, to try to impose something that we have learned throughout these years. As I mentioned in the presentation, we had to build these solutions and these projects hand in hand with the farmers. So I feel that respect and admiration that I have for each of the salt farmers as I have them for my family has helped to open these doors. And there is a strong bond that I don't think uh, I could detach myself from at any time. We say that we bring it even in our last name, Salazar. Sal is there present. So for me, it has been very important. It is a very gratifying work. The collaborative work with the communities is truly what is very fulfilling for me and has generated this positive change to see farmers sending me pictures of the birds. Look, we sighted this bird. And this is creating this change in the farmers, and I think is the best rewards we can have in our work with Manomet. We have many questions. We're gonna try to shorten the answers. I on the verge of tears because this is very nice to hear and the passion that we can hear from you. The Salazar and salt in there. I didn't see that coming. What will be your next goal or vision that you want to accomplish with this project? Well, I think that when we complete this project, our idea is to keep benefiting more farmers. Right now, we have 10 pilot farms, but there are 300 farms that every year are affected by climate change. And to keep working with more salt farmers, not only in the San Lorenzo town, but also to expand to other areas where there is this need, and to keep it growing, and in the end to manage to have the 300 salt farms resilient to climate change working for conservation of shorebirds. Amazing. I have a question about species, so maybe to make use of the slides, maybe one that has a lot of pictures. Before, I'm going to ask the audience, Do you see any different feathers? We have audience from North America that usually see them in their mating feathers. This question says, what are the 13 species? Is there an online list where we can access what are the species present in Honduras in the salt farms? Well, throughout these years, the salt farms have been a key part of several monitoring done by Manomet, by the MSP program as well. So these documents are online, available for you to review them. This trinational monitoring work that has been taking place in the three countries that share the Gulf. Some of these species might not remember them all. The importance of these species that nest, the Wilson plover, and we also have commonly alcaravanes in the short-billed dowitcher. We also find them in the farms and are very important. Several plovers, Calidris minutia, another very common species you see in the salt farms. And we have several, more than the 13 that we have in the salt farms. And through this monitoring work, we're recording and updating the species found in the area. There's one that you've mentioned several times, and please mention it in English so that we can ensure interpretation. What is your favorite species of the ones that you see in the salt farms? I think that my favorite species, and the one that is our signature species in our family, is the monjita, the Hematococcus mexican. Valid to share that the family salt farm is a bird sanctuary declared by a local organization here in Honduras, Aves Honduras, and that's our representative bird because it was the first one that caught my eye and with which we started this involvement with shorebirds. I'm going to continue with, as the previous webinar, we're going to have to answer some questions later online, but we still have 10 minutes, so let's move on with the next questions. One that is very technical about salineras. You have mentioned about the heaters to improve the salt farms. How does this work? Um, how does this process work? The heating pools are, as you can see in the picture here, is made of the soil itself. So that structure is created like a square lagoon, depending on the farmer. Each heating pool has different measurements or depending on the space available in the farm. And these heating pools don't have any isolation. They're just very shallow pools, and throughout the water management and the movement when they enter to the reserve lagoon throughout these pools. In the south of the country, we have to also mention is one of the warmest areas in the country, and they have the more marked seasons. So you have a summer and winter seasons, and this allows the salt production. And thanks to the movement of the waters in these cooling heating pools is how we manage to obtain this degree of salinity of the Baume degrees. And when we have 16 degrees and higher, the most optimal degree, we can move on to the water, to the structures that look wider on this photo, where we have the evaporation process. So they're made with soil throughout the years. You have the water management, a layer appears that is salitre. It's a layer that where salinity can increase in the water throughout the production process. So is basically building more heating pools so that more salt can be produced. I have several questions that are related, so I'm going to try to join them together. The first one is, what were the natural habitats for wildlife before the alteration of this landscape for the salt farms? what were the losses of biodiversity, if any, and what growth perspective is there for salt farming activities. Will this impact positively or negatively? I think this segues into what you were mentioning in the with the mangroves that appear in the project. I leave those three questions for you to give one answer. Well, thanks to the research done in the little documentation that we found about the salt farms, we were hearing about the expansion of these farms in mudflats and mangroves. However, nowadays, all the salt farms are outside of the Bay of San Lorenzo protected area. At the time, initially, there was dry tropical forest that is the predominant ecosystem in the southern part. These became into plots for cattle ranching and then later into salt farms. That was the ecosystem in the past that transformed the dry forest, where we had different species of this type of ecosystem, and now into salt farms. As the process is artisanal, this is a less invasive process than other industries. It does have impact, but also allows the use of biodiversity within these farms. We have done not only shorebird monitoring, but also in the past through trap cameras, uh, we found white-tailed deer, raccoons, gray fox, crocodiles in the winter when the rivers flood. We find several crocodiles and a diversity of species. All these species use these salt farms. They have food available. These are places that are safe because they're not bothered by the farmers or the workers. Something that also happens is that these sites during winter are inactive. So they become areas where you're not going to have people for 6 months of the year. In some cases, there is also shrimp farming in a smaller scale within the salt farms. And the idea with the project truly is to avoid farmers to believe that they need to have a larger farm, that they have to expand towards natural areas, but that within the surface that they already have, we're doing the redesign. They themselves mentioned that one farm not doesn't need to be larger. It needs to be more productive, which is what we are achieving with the work on redesigning the farms. The idea is to avoid these farms to expand and also to preserve the artisanal production. We don't want it to disappear because if it disappears, then maybe it could be a greater danger that these will transform in shrimp farms that are more intensive or other type of industry that could affect natural ecosystems of the Bay of San Lorenzo more. Thank you, Julia. I'm gonna, in these few minutes, it says, I don't know if you can read the chat. This question is in English. Gina's second question says, commonly, industries that are compatible with women's lives are of a lower status. Oftentimes, large corporations have a role in further marginalizing the small operators. So, is this a factor in your work? I think the question goes towards how do you, we talked about women empowerment, but uh, what is the perspective at the industry scale? Of course, I mentioned that part of the work has been to make the salt farming industry more visible. This is an industry that has been forgotten without any support from the government as a small scale industry. That's not very important. Salt as a cheap product, easy to get. And the idea to make the industry more visible is to give them their place into industry and the importance it has, supporting these local communities in the second most important activity in the South that generates millions in jobs every year. And we have to bring back the focus into us so that the industry can receive more support, for the industry not to disappear, and to keep generating opportunities for female farmers as well, to be able to have a brand that is friendly with shorebirds, that we can enter international markets, even locally, to sell salt and that we have found in this change that the consumer has an interest in having these products that have history, products with a cause that support the environment as well. So the idea is with the civilization work to keep working on this and to keep catching the eye and highlighting the different bodies, organizations that can give us support for the salt production to keep growing and to have greater growth in these homes and women farmers. Thank you, Julia. Thank you all for your questions and for getting online for this webinar. I want to believe that we all are going to live here more inspired and a little jealous of uh, Julia's job that impacts on so many people, and not only the lives of people, but also the place where you were born, grew up, and you're going to keep enjoying, and is even present in your last name. I don't know if you want to close with a message. I think here we have a lot of your neighbors, probably other farmers as well, salt farmers. I'm going to make something different and give you the floor to close the webinar. Thank you, Andrea. Once again, I want to repeat my thanks to the people we work together every day. None of this will be possible without their support, with their openness. They probably hesitated at a point, and they probably asked, like, how come this is happening to us? Because as farmers, we have been forgotten for many years. And truly to see as a reality, to bring these tangible benefits to the farmers is what has helped us gain their trust, for them to trust that there's a process in which artisanal salt farming and conservation can walk hand in hand. If you can do this work, I invite you all here who are connected to visit us, to visit Honduras, to visit the artisanal salt farms where you can learn about this. You're going to be welcomed with open arms by very warm people and you're going to have a very nice experience. Honduras has a lot to offer. And I just want to invite you so that you can follow us in our social media so that you can see all the work that we're going to keep doing. Thank you very much. Thank you, Julia. And for those who are connecting from different countries and want to support our work and Manomet's work, we have the QR code to close. And you can also visit our website, manomet.org, and you can go to the support tab. You can find us there. Impacts such as this, we're working very hard with our team in the Americas. Thank you all, and see you in July with the next webinar. Bye, Julia. Bye, all. Thank you very much.